Hello and welcome to another InventRight TV show. My name is Andrew Krause. I co-founded InventRight 21 years ago with Stephen Key, and we've been coaching and mentoring inventors ever since. We have students in over 65 countries. So today I'm interviewing Mike Kelly. He is an inventor, and welcome, Mike. How are you doing?
Andrew, very well, thank you, and thanks for the opportunity.
Well, thank you for coming on. You know, I want to show you guys a short video on a product that Mike's been working on just to provide some context, and he's going to share his personal experience, upsides, downsides, what have you. So let's take a quick look at that video. Here we go.
If you drive in winter, you know how dangerous and stressful driving with low visibility due to snow and ice can be. You've tried tapping your wipers while driving and pulling over to clean your blades, but both put your safety at risk. There has to be a better way. Now there is. Introducing the revolutionary new Shaker Wiper De-Icer. Simply push a button inside of your vehicle and the Shaker Wiper De-Icer goes to work immediately, vibrating your blades as they sweep across your windshield, allowing the wiper blades to release trapped frozen debris. Blades make proper contact again instantly, improving your wiper's ability to function and improving visibility. The Shaker Wiper De-Icer installs in minutes and works with most vehicle makes and models.
Okay, we're back. Mike, that's a really cool product, man.
Well, literally, it only works in the winter, right? So the reality of that is that it's something I came up with quite a while ago, and I'm actually no longer involved with it. It's probably the last 5 years I sold the business, but it's still an active product called the Shaker Wiper De-Icer. And people would understand its concepts if they ever drove in winter conditions where their wiper blades would freeze up or get frozen debris in the tracks. It will streak on the windshield, and an individual might feel so impressed to reach out the window while they're driving in cold weather to catch and flick the wiper blade. It's called the Michigan flick. It's dangerous, which is how my idea concept originally came up.
You had to educate me, originally being from California and living in Henderson, Las Vegas area for the last 13 years. I was like, people do that? They reach out, flick their windshield out of their window. And I was like, wow, okay. So you had to educate me on that because I've never lived in that cold of an environment. But apparently it's a big safety issue that you're solving there.
It is. People die from this. And, you know, you think about when you're driving, if your visibility is obscured, 98% of all accidents occur from visibility situations, meaning lack thereof. So if you can't see at your front windshield clearly because of frozen debris under the wiper blade, it's a problem. And it happened to me, which is how the idea was originally conceived.
So you ventured this product, you sold it yourself, and you shared with me, you wanted to tell your story. You said you've been a big fan, you know, you've been watching us for a long time, you wanted to contribute to the community. I thought that was so cool that you wanted to share your personal experience. So I go ahead and share whatever
Okay.
it was.
Well, it was a long journey. It was a number of years, probably if I think starting in '98. Moving through 2015. So I had a good long run with this, and the product's still being sold. But the reality is that a lot of inventors, and myself included way back then, we have blinders on, and we don't take criticism well, and we think it's the best thing since sliced bread, and that people will beat a path to your door for the better mousetrap. No, it doesn't work that way. You know, if I can go on a high level, in my mind, there's two types of inventions. Number one, there is the pioneering kind of invention, or the mousetrap. And then there is the better mousetrap. I think the better mousetrap, which is what I'm currently working on, is a better way to go. Whereas you can imagine going into an automotive type company to tell them that you want to shake and vibrate their wiper blades, when all they're doing over their engineering experience and techniques are to make wiper blades vibration free so they have good clean contact. It's not intuitive. So it took me many, many months, you know, if the internet wasn't around back then for much, but, you know, literally many, many months talking to people on the phone, trying to explain why you actually needed to vibrate a wiper blade to get rid of the problem.
Did you not have a good, like, short video that explained it back then?
Well, it was VHS back then.
Okay,
and,
it's harder to get that.
It was harder to do, but, you know, literally I actually at one point, so first of all, this came from Napkin. There was a Napkin episode, literally, and all the way to the shelf, and all the way in between over many years. And, you know, you can encapsulate it really quickly, but at the end of the day, it's a lot of work. And, you know, in hindsight, if you guys were around back then, I suspect I probably would not have taken that path. but I wouldn't be here right now if I hadn't taken that path. So it's irrelevant. But
True.
it's a lot of hard work, and as euphoric as you may feel, I mean, I had a lot of accolades. I had a lot of free press for people. You know, there's one quote I pulled out here, and this automotive writer said, "The shaker is one of the most innovative, if not the most innovative developments for windshield wipers since their invention a century ago." Like, that goes to your head.
Yeah.
Wow, I've really caught on to something here, and everyone's going to be my path to my door. It doesn't happen that way. There's a lot of work.
You get so that lasts for a little bit, but then you get brought down pretty quick by the reality of running a business and selling a product yourself. Like that's just a grind, right? I mean,
you know, my recommendation to most people right now, if you're inventing, keep doing it. You know, innovation is important. It moves the world forward. But, you know, find a network of people who have already been there and done that. Let them bring it to the marketplace. However you want to do that, license it. You guys have the experience. I'm currently trying to sell my idea for a bicycle safety invention, which again will help save lives. Why
are you so obsessed with saving lives, Mike?
That's my drive. That's my drive.
I love it.
You know,
that's great.
Without getting into the psych aspect of it, all humans are selfish to a degree. My selfish thing is I feel good when I help somebody. I don't know how many people I saved from the shaker being on their vehicle. I had a lot of people that bought it and told us, "Oh my God, we got through a snowstorm. Couldn't have done it without the shaker."
You'll never know because you saved them.
Exactly. But it's still on the market, and it must be doing something right. Its main focus, by the way, is on the heavy snowplow fleets and the industrial truck lines. So these people can't afford to stop and not drive in bad weather conditions. So this kind of a product helps them get through those episodes.
So looking back, I mean, would it have been to save those lives rather than to have to and license it to a big company and maybe sold more than you were selling? What kind of timeline? I didn't ask you before. How long was that journey? Because they can be long.
So really quickly, the idea conceived with going off the road from a snowstorm, flicking my wiper blade when I shouldn't have been doing it. That was in the late 80s. Wrote the idea in a book, put the idea away for 10 years. In 1998, I brought the idea onto a napkin in a cafeteria to an old college friend who was now working in the patent business for a high-tech company. He loved the idea, and that was enough initiative for me to think, oh, someone out there who knows what they're talking about thought it was a great idea. It took me 6 months to a year to get a meeting with Ford down in Dearborn. Brought a crude prototype down. They simulated in their environmental chambers all the weather conditions you can think of, including snow, sleet, and hail. And they gave it a thumbs up, saying it was the best solution to the problem they'd come across yet. But
I was going to say that, but
there were 13 pages of engineering references from that I would have to get a crash test done. Literally, I had to attach these to the wiper arms and slam a vehicle into a wall and see if they stayed on. I did that. That was a couple of years later.
Years later.
All of the government standards, and it's incredible the amount of things you have to do. And now, my hindsight reference is inventors out there. If you can, come up with an idea, number one, license it or sell it, but try and make it as simplistic as possible. When you get into medical or electrical or automotive or government standards, the time involved and the money involved is just incredible. And that has nothing to do with the patents. I spent nearly $250,000 on patents.
Whoa.
It was craziness. Would I spend that amount now? No. Currently, the one that I've got in the works, the bicycle safety accessory, I've got a provisional.
Yeah.
And it'll be fine. I have
$75. You're not spending enough money, man. Spend more.
But, at one point, jumping ahead, and so going through getting molds made, things have changed. You can literally do your mold testing online without anybody seeing what your product is. All AI work. But back when I was doing this, I had to drive to Montreal every second week to the mold maker and make sure things were being done right. It took a year to get the molds developed. And then we had to change them. I spent probably close to $175,000 on molds.
Yeah. All of which you don't need to be concerned about when you're licensing, right? I mean, you don't need to worry about that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
so let's talk about that. People way underestimate what it costs to make and sell a product themselves. Can you talk about that a bit?
Sure. If it's a mass-produced product, that's one thing. If it's not so mass-produced, you can probably these days do the 3D prints And literally, the current product I'm working on, it's an advanced mold. It looks like a finished product, but it cost a lot of money to get it 3D printed, one of. But the 3D printing is probably limited to roughly maybe in the few thousand, 10,000 max from a cost-effective perspective. So you have to go to molds, and molds probably at a minimum are going to cost you 15 to 20 grand US these days, which is a tenth of the price that it cost when I was doing these, but it's more accessible to people. So, do you need a prototype, a high fidelity prototype? It depends who your market is that you're trying to sell or license to or sell the idea to. I know people generally like to have their hands on things. That gives them a sense of reinforcement, but you can very quickly go down the rabbit hole when you're bringing the product to market yourself.
Yeah, like how about cash flow? I mean, you're putting money out and it doesn't come back for quite some time. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I went the investor route to bring funds in, and a lot of investors, I fell into the trap myself. I didn't have enough investment, I think, at the end of the day. But you need money. People don't do things for free. There's only so much free advice you can get off the internet to when finally the rubber hits the road, and you have to pay people to do things.
Yeah.
I spent close to $250,000 on patents.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. That's like, as opposed to the product you're working on now, you're spending 75 on a provisional, and you're working on sounds like a more or less a licensing deal. But
I may file the patent, but whether or not I'll pursue it to the nth degree. I actually wrote the patent myself, which you might think, oh my God, Mike, why would you do that? I did it because I wanted to challenge myself. And I spent
wow, that is a little crazy.
So I'll see how that goes. But at the end of the day, the costs are. Think of all the areas related to a product. Like here's an original shaker box. Okay, it's a clamshell.
Yeah. Pretty nice.
You have to get all of the graphics done, all of the writing done, the manuals written up. There's no product in this, but it's got to be something that is eye-catching and viable for people to look at. It takes a lot of time.
How about employees? Like, what were your costs there?
Well, fortunately, I hired employees based on share ownership.
Oh,
so
okay.
I broke that down on that basis. Once we started generating revenue, then there were salaries paid out and so on. But I'm not a good business person. I'm probably one of the worst business people around.
Well, and you're a pretty damn smart guy. I mean, the other people might be creative but not business savvy, right? And I don't think you need to be super smart to license. You just need to be creative. But if you're going to venture, you need to have business skills, and you need to be very logical and a little less emotional. You seem pretty damn smart to me, and I don't know if every inventor is as smart as you are. So it's like, but it's not just about being smart too. It's about being driven. So you need to be equally excited about running a business as your product. I mean, you talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, well, first of all, before I forget, everyone out there watching your channel should view the movie A Flash of Genius.
Yeah.
Okay, about Robert Kearns, the intermittent wiper arm inventor. I actually, at the end of that movie showing, I stood up and I clapped in the theater, and I was the only one doing that. People had no idea why this person would be doing that, but it resonated. The story resonated with me, all the trials and tribulations he went through.
Yeah.
But, the first thing people fail to do is have a plan. You have to have a plan. So, take time, invest in the plan for what you plan to be doing, regardless if it's licensing, selling the idea, or bringing it to market. And if you've got a plan, at least you've got a guideline with a timeline.
Well, and a lot of people don't have a plan. They just see the one next thing. They don't look at the path they're going down. They just want to do that one next thing. But that's very dangerous when you're venturing, because there's so much involved, so much money involved, so much risk involved, that is extremely dangerous. Anybody that's going to venture a product needs a mentor. Anybody licensed the product needs a mentor too. But you're not going to mortgage your house and home when you're licensing, but people do when they venture and try to sell the product themselves. I want to come back to Ford. You mentioned Ford. I've always said that, you might as well shoot yourself in the head right now. Nobody do that. It was just a joke. If you're going to try to license to a major automotive manufacturer, but automotive aftermarket is great. And that seems to be the direction that the shaker went.
It did.
So can you talk about that? And I don't usually have a story to back it up, but you got a story, and that's what you told me more or less too, but correct me if I'm wrong. If I'm
It was
incorrect.
close to a 3-year process to get validated through FCS, which is Ford Component Services. They validate it, they do their own testing, they have their own part number, it sells in dealerships, they do their own training for it, and it's quite in depth. And of course, they get their margins for it. But at the end of the day, was it worth it? I think it was. It added credibility to the product. Ultimately, I ended up with doing a somewhat semi-exclusive deal with a distributor. And they chose not to continue a relationship with Ford because the margins were so low.
No?
But, it comes down to what you said originally, that, are you better to have 30 or 40% of a few numbers sold, or a small percent, 1 or 2% of many, many sold?
Well, but people have this perception, like if I license to a major automotive manufacturer, that they're selling God knows how many cars, but people don't understand the sensitivity with pricing on adding any cost of any kind. So like if I saw your product and they're like, I want it to come off every Ford off the line, I'd be like, automotive aftermarket, huge market, lot of potential licensees, a lot of volume being done here, especially for this type of product. And I think you're going to be way more likely to do a deal in that area than with a major automotive company. Am I wrong on that? Correct me.
No, it's literally every penny. Like you do the multiples of vehicles sold, and they license technologies that they create to other companies. So again, it's every penny multiplied, but every penny sold. So if you're coming in there with something that is a lot of pennies, there's got to be a really good justification for it. Mm-hmm. And that justification to make them look better, they're safety conscious, or they're making a good margin on it. There's all those variables involved. It's a tough road to haul, and I wouldn't do that again myself.
Okay, well, that's good. That's what I wanted to hear, if you would or not.
Too much time and investment for the payback. It wasn't worth it. Like literally, getting involved with a company called PMG Technologies in Canada, we slammed an SUV into a cement wall with shakers on it, all videotaped, just to see that they stayed on and didn't come loose and become a hazard when they might become projectiles or something.
Wow.
So, that took a lot of money, it took a lot of time, and it was necessary. It had to be done for that kind of product. So, having a good idea is one thing, but bringing it to reality is a completely different animal.
Mm-hmm. And when you do the automotive aftermarket, you don't need to jump through all those hoops. Some of the same hoops maybe, but not necessarily as many as with the major automotive.
If you're not directly in the automotive line, like FCS was Ford Motor Company, that you have to go through all the hoops. If you're just on the outside aftermarket of distributors selling to the auto zones or something, they don't have the same kind of standards.
Right.
Which can be scary sometimes if you think about it. But that being said, that's a possibility also. But in my mind right now, from hindsight, the licensing route to an entity that can bring it in and get it into a clamshell and then give it to those dealer shops, that's a nice way to go.
Yeah.
This, inventing is very, very life consuming. It can take over your life. Like, it's amazing. You get awards for things in life. I think the best award should be people that can stay happily married. My wife we've been married 33 years. I can't imagine being married to anybody else or not being married. But for the things I put her through, it's incredible. Like I have inventors. I'm sure you know what that is.
Yeah.
It's an inflammation of the cognitive processes related to anytime we see a problem, we have to try and solve it.
Well, and it adds to the stress when you're risking tons of money financially to venture and try to sell the product yourself, as opposed to licensing it. Our students can say to their spouse, male or female, "Oh no, look, I'm getting a provisional, and I spent a few bucks on a sell sheet, virtual prototype, and I'm pitching it. We're not hiring employees. I'm not starting a business, and okay, all right." It puts a lot of stress on spouses and family and stuff with the money.
I've promised my wife that I will never bring another product to market. It's that
I'm
simple.
Not so sure
I'm too old. I'm too old for that.
Yeah.
But if you have a good appreciation of it, it makes you understand why you'd probably want to say that. And I've been in the trenches enough. There's some euphoric moments about inventing. There's no denying it. Getting awards, being at a trade show. I remember we went to the Toronto Auto Show one year, a 2-week show. And we sold out of all the shakers we brought in there. People were crazy about it. But, you know, that was then and this is now. And a lot happened since that point. But, you know the thing that ruins inventing? Money. The need to make money ruins the fun you get out of inventing things. I think when you license or sell an idea, you're somewhat excluded from having to go through that stress.
Yeah. Well, and if they don't perform, you get it back. They got to meet minimum guarantees. And
you know, I will tell you one negative. So one of the things that I did in hindsight that I should have done, I gave full exclusivity later on in the tenure of the product. This was, I think, around 2012 or 13. I won't mention the name, but it was a multi-billion-dollar automotive company. I gave them full exclusivity rights. Okay. Well, as it turned out, it was a nightmare. They basically killed the product.
But in retrospect, correct me if I'm wrong, you were probably going to say, I didn't have things in that contract that should have been in there.
Sure. At the end of the day, yeah.
If there's minimum guarantees, if there's other milestones, they weren't meeting those, you could just simply send them an email saying you're not meeting the contractual terms of the licensing agreement, and I'm taking it back.
And the reality in my case, it was going to cost me $450,000 US to successfully sue them without 100% chance of it coming to fruition in my favor.
You know, this is one of the things that our students and our fans are concerned about. We've never had it happen to one of our students. And correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't know your particular case, but if the contract is set up properly, you would never have to spend $450,000 to sue them.
I suppose so. I'll give you a more positive spin.
Although if a company is being super difficult, I guess you might. I mean, it doesn't matter what a contract says. If somebody wants to argue with you in courts, they can. You know.
Well, it somewhat forced me to sell the company at the end of the journey, but
that sucks. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, I still save people, right? That's my mindset, and I learned a lot. But there was one aspect where I had partial exclusivity to a distributor, and they rent a rye outside of where they were supposed to territorially, and I had to sue them. Now, this is where the patents came in. The patents gave me the ability to actually do that. But it cost me, here in Ontario, in Canada, at least in Ontario, you have to go through arbitration before you go to the courts. I guess so, not to burden the courts. Yeah. But it cost me $20,000 to basically shut them down. It cost me $20,000 to shut them down.
Yeah.
So, you know, another hindsight thing, and yeah, it sounds great to word the ideal contract, but it's easier said than done.
There's still just words on a page. People can go against it and they'll all sue me.
They can. And, you know, in my mind, I think IP, intellectual property, is important. It adds credibility, if nothing else. And if your idea is a potential mass market idea, IP is even more important. If it's more of a novelty thing, are patents so important? I would say not.
Right. That's our experience too. Yeah.
But the reality is patents are really only valid if you can afford to defend them. And I think that's a trap, a rabbit hole that a lot of inventors fall down. And, you know, I didn't have $450,000 without a guarantee.
It's just perceived protection. Fortunately, most companies respect that.
It is, yeah. Most
you just have to take that risk.
Yeah.
You know?
So, you know, the provisional route, I think, is a wise route to go. You're not committing the farm. You're not mortgaging, as you referenced.
Well, it's a pretty dramatic difference. You went from $250,000 in patents to $75 provisional.
It's 120 Canadian.
Canadians always talk about the exchange rate. That's funny because you guys are always really upset.
Probably not old enough. Maybe you are, but in the early 70s, the Canadian dollar was actually 5 cents more than the U.S. one.
Yeah. But sorry, that was a long time ago.
It is what it is.
Sometimes I wonder why the American dollar is still so strong.
Well, I'll tell you one reason. You're able to send vaccines up here that we need. Thanks very much. Okay. So you guys have more worth. And
I did that personally. I personally shipped those myself. Yeah. Anyway, Mike, thank you so much. This series that we're doing, it's one thing for Stephen or myself to say something, but it's really nice to have an inventor come on and share their personal experience. And I just, being part of the online InventRight community, you just said I wanted to share my experience. I think it might help some folks. It really says a lot about who you are. I think the types of products, I think it's fine to do novelty gag gifts and stuff, nothing wrong with that. But it's really cool that you tend to focus on products that save lives. And it's cool that you, which I think Steve and I are guilty of this, to a certain extent. I'm selfish. I like feeling good about helping people.
That's
Yeah.
to be human.
And I think it is a human trait, and I think it's important to acknowledge that it's not always, you're not always doing it just for the other person. It makes you feel good too. But hey, that just makes the world a better place.
It
So
does.
it's all good.
There's not enough altruism that goes around out there. So
Yeah, absolutely. So Mike, thank you so much. I'll remind everybody, take care, keep inventing, and we'll catch up with you next time. See you guys next time. Bye.
There's a great idea in each of us. But it's truly magical to see it come to life. Sharing your creativity with the world has never been easier. We can help.